What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Representing the Resin. My name is James Melbourne, and today we are joined by Connor of Pineapple Reserve. Connor, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Oh, man, I couldn't wait to come on. I appreciate it as well. Just happy to be here.
Absolutely. So as we do in all our shows, there's a ton of stuff I want to talk to you about as far as cultivation goes. The strains you're running are phenomenal. I had a chance to try some of the melt and was just absolutely blown away. But before we get into that, I want to learn a little bit more about you. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Windsor, Ontario. So currently I reside in BC. I grew up in Windsor, and around 2011, it was basically like I got out of high school and then I joined the Navy. So I left Windsor when I was 19 years old. Actually, it was my 19th birthday, my first day of basic training for the military. So after the, growing up in Windsor, my life really kind of shifted province to province and wherever since then.
All right, I have so many questions here. So let's rewind and kind of unpack everything that led up to leaving Windsor in the military. What was childhood like for you? Like, do you have a fond memory of childhood? Was childhood kind of like not the best? How was that for you growing up in your early days?
I was the last child in my family. I got two sisters and an older brother, and I was the youngest. And my parents split, so it was just kind of, I kept to myself a lot growing up. I always had like a close core group of friends that were really near and dear to me. So I was always fortunate for that. But basically, like growing up, my mother, she was sick, so I took care of her a lot in terms of like getting groceries or making food, whatever. So she has fibromyalgia and she had some cancer, and she went through a lot. So at the time, I was kind of the only one residing around to be there to handle that all. So
was that throughout childhood for you, or did that start at a specific age?
I was probably in like grade like 3 or 4 when that started happening.
Wow.
So I was pretty young. And my sisters moved out and such. So my father wasn't there. So it was, mainly me, my brother, and her. So growing up, I just kind of kept to myself, played guitar a lot. It was just kind of like not the greatest childhood, but I learned a lot, right? And
Absolutely.
It gave me a lot of good qualities that I use every day in my life today, right? Like, when it comes to cooking, I started cooking at a young age. So right now I got 3 kids and my wife, and I make all the meals mostly. So I love cooking, right? It's just started that young. So I look back on it and I take positives out of certain things like that. But I am fortunate enough that it wasn't like a really bad, like a lot of things could have been worse in the whole entire situation of it. But yeah.
When did you become aware of cannabis? Like, when did it first become an object to you that you could recognize?
Probably like my first year of high school, that I actually considered using it. Like, I was really into music, and like playing guitar and stuff like that. So the culture of weed was always around when I went to like concerts and stuff like that. But I didn't really like actually try things until I was in like grade 9. And then from there, it was like I started, you know, I'll grab an ounce and sell some of this to my friends, and you know,
Absolutely.
that whole thing started up, and I did that like all throughout high school. Another thing we like to do was like those honeybee extractors.
Yeah.
We'd get that, make some honey oil with that. So that all started back in like I think 2007.
So were you, when you first started experimenting with cannabis, was it a very like fast love affair where you began using really quite frequently immediately?
Yeah, I think at the time too, I was in high school and I you know, partied a lot as well. So
Yeah.
so I was drinking a lot too. Did other drugs, like nothing to any extreme, but experimented with things. But cannabis was always just the nice natural, like just standard greatness.
Now, being
um,
being from
so
out east, sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
Being from out east, is it was it more hash or was it more flower for you growing up?
in Windsor it was more flower. Um, yeah, it was definitely more flower. I didn't really get into hash until like my later years of my consumption. And yeah, Windsor it was just all flower for the most part.
Was there a reason, the reason behind joining the military? Was that something that you were always looking to do, or was that sort of prompted because of a scenario in life that arose?
Well, at the time, I was getting out of high school, and it was around like 2010, 2011. Around that time, there was the 2008 like you know financial crisis or whatever. A lot of the auto industry was involved, and like jobs in Detroit at the time um, were very scarce, and things dried up for work essentially. So there was just no opportunity. And at the time, I was living with my mom, and you know, I was taking care of her most of my life, and I kind of needed to just get out and do some shit. Like, you know, at the time, Windsor was just dried up, and I saw just no opportunity for me to enjoy anything. Like, I'm not just gonna like jump into some student loan debt or something that I wasn't sure of that I wanted to pursue. And I mean, it was just fucking Windsor. I was like, whatever, I'll go see somewhere else. Why not?
Did you
That
like,
was like the entire reason for it. I just wanted something different, total change up.
and so what was that like, you know, when you made that decision and you stepped on the bus? um you know, what was your experience like in that first week of joining the military?
Well, it was like pretty nerve wracking for sure. But you know, I was also very excited. But all I can really remember was I walked in and I had like one headphone in a ear. I also had my eyebrow piercing. I had an eyebrow piercing at the time, and it was all fucked up because we did mushrooms to get it in. Like we were on mushrooms at night, and uh, hold on, there's some sirens.
No worries.
So I took it out, but like you can kind of at the time you could kind of tell because there's a scar because we were all, you know, just we were like 17 at at the time, and fast forward, I have this guy who's about 6'5", some master bombardier, and he just looks at me, just shakes his head, and just made a made an example of me. So I remember that. That was great. It was my birthday, and he knew it too. And yeah, he ripped into me pretty good called me a, fancy piece of shit and all this other stuff. And yeah, it's funny looking back on it because I knew it was all a game, right? Like in the end, they come up to you, they'll have smokes with you, if you're good and stuff, and they'll talk to you like the instructors after
Yeah.
you've been in, and they always, they just say it's all a game or whatever. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
a hazing.
yeah, exactly.
For sure.
So I remember that. That was pretty sweet. just traumatizing.
And what was your chosen vocation? Like, what did you do while you were there? What did you study to be?
Oh, so I went to basic training in Saint Jean sur Richelieu, Quebec. Um, and after a few months, I was sent to BC because I joined the Navy, and my job was a sonar operator. So basically, anti-submarine warfare, submarine stuff. So after the basic training, I went to BC to pursue the training in that part of the job. But essentially, first off, you got to pass basic training, be a soldier first in that sense. So I was in Quebec for a few months and flew over to BC, where I learned about my trade that I was doing.
And what was it like? I mean, were you underwater in lakes, or what? Were you in the ocean? Like, what were you doing?
No, it's like when we first get there, it's like you're now training to be a sonar operator. So it's like you and some other classmates are there, and you guys basically have to wait to get on a course that will teach you your qualifications. So, after waiting around for a couple of months doing dick all, they managed to get me on a course with some other guys, and it's about 10 other people that were on this course. And I mean, very random people. There's me, there's one of my other good buddies, Dan. He was 25, also from Windsor. Some other, this guy was like 57 years old, and he was here. He's great too. It's just so many different people. And so when we did that course with the 10 of us, it's about 6 months long, and they teach you how to do your job. And then once you learn how to do your job at the school, they then you graduated, and then they get you a posting for a ship or submarine, whichever way you want to go. So from the school, we got posted to the ship. My ship happened to be in Nova Scotia, so I had graduated school in BC, and I flew over because I was posted to Halifax. So from there, I go. I'm on the ship. Basically, if the ship's alongside, you work there like a normal Monday to Friday, like at 8 to 4 kind of hours. So if you're not doing anything, you go home at the end of the night. The ship's alongside. Otherwise, if you're at sea and you have a busy schedule, then you're obviously out in the ocean quite often. So when I first arrived in Halifax, my ship was actually being like worked on. So I was in something called the shore office, which is just a hangar on an airfield filled with a whole bunch of bored people because there's nothing to do. So you worked out, you did whatever, you just waited until the ship was ready. And finally the ship was ready. And then from there, it was like the next 6 years of my life was just like ship life.
Wow, 6 years. So, did you enjoy it? You clearly, you stuck around. So it was something.
I liked going places. That was cool. Been to a lot of different countries. I really liked a lot of the people. I met some really cool people, and they made it fun. They made it enjoyable. Like, when if you think about it, you're on a ship with 256 guys or 156. It really ranges depending on the trial or mission. But there's like a core group of guys that you like hang out with and shoot the shit with and develop relationships with because you fucking see them all the time and it's tight quarters. And you kind of get like a little family going on.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so that was really cool. I like that. Because I happen to meet a lot of interesting people that I'm still very close with to this day. And they all do something wildly different, but at one point in time we were all together. And it's crazy actually to see people's trajectories when they continue on certain things, right?
Absolutely. So what prompted the exit? I mean, 5 years in, you're really developing a career and a home. Like, what prompted that move to leave what is most people's lifetime career?
Well, okay, so when I first joined the military, my cannabis use went like completely gone for a few years. Like I had to be because I was getting, I got tested a couple times or whatever for certain things upon entry. So I was just like, whatever, I was busy enough for fuck's sakes. I didn't really need to do it at the time because I did it recreationally in high school. Like I never considered it like medicine. Honestly, in high school, I was just like trying to, pass the time or do, party and whatever. But later on in the military, I started having just like a lot of stomach problems, a lot of energy problems, just like not feeling myself. And
When did that start happening?
that started happening in like 2016, 2017. And I just like constantly having bad bowel movements. And at the time, cannabis, I started back up again and it helped me in so many ways just during that time of not knowing what the fuck was wrong with me. And I was also just getting overworked. Like, my son was born, like, my wife was pregnant with my first son in 2016 as well. And I did a deployment over off the coast of Syria, and I was there for a few months while she was pregnant. And then after that deployment, came home. It was like a month, and then she had the baby. And then 3 days after the baby, they asked me to go somewhere else for 5 months, and they told me I'd be leaving next week. And at this point, I've been on that ship for like 6 years, and I was like, guys, I was supposed to be posted to like a shore unit. Now, a shore unit is something, it's like basically you do your tenure as like 5 years or whatever on a ship, and then you get posted to a shore unit to like further your education in your job or something and progress in your career. And I wasn't getting that part, so I was pissed. And that's when I sort of like kind of like manifesting my out, like getting out of the military, because I knew right away that like how I was feeling, they weren't addressing any of my problems at all, like my health issues. They were just like pretty nonchalant with it. They told me, oh, if you get tested for this, you're gonna miss time at sea, or you're gonna have to get out of your trade. Just like a lot of things that like at the time when you're in the military too, I mentioned that you develop a bond with all these guys. So I also struggled mentally. Like, I wanted to be at sea, but I also felt holy, like, just I don't know, at the time I didn't know what it was, but my stomach, my anxiety was killing me. It was just like the worst it was ever during that time. And so when I had all those problems develop, I realized that they weren't there when I asked them for medical cannabis. Like, they weren't there to say, yeah, that's what we're gonna do, because they instantly shot it down. Even though that there was other people I knew that had been prescribed uh, medical cannabis inside the military at the time. So, you know, I was pretty stubborn, and then since then,
Did you
basically,
suspect?
what's that?
did you suspect that it was Crohn's or colitis or IBS, and was that what
Yeah.
you were bringing to them, and they were saying no, don't get tested for that because you wouldn't get back onto the boat if you got diagnosed with one of those things?
Basically, they thought I was like I had celiac disease, so like
Yeah.
I could eat gluten or whatever. But then they're like, if you have celiac disease, you can't sail, so you can't be in the Navy. And it was like, okay, then start the process. But like they were almost like, like it's a bad thing. So, but it was always presented to me like it was like an option, but they never gave me the option. So I just I was upset about that. So basically, what happened was what it really escalated, because I've always had like during that part of the time I was using cannabis again medically, like for myself and not telling the military. I used it. I had a rosin press and I'd squish flour back in like 2017 or whatever. And I knew that like at the time, things were becoming legal. The talks were all there, blah blah blah, and I really wanted to like pivot into maybe that world, because I enjoyed that world a lot back in my earlier days and during the last few years of using it medically up to that point. And so once the military basically denied me the use of it, I had an incident on the base. It was my buddy. We were like, okay, so we were at this base in Halifax by the water. I had to go up a hill. To go up that hill, there's a gate. So the military police were doing an exercise that day, and the exercise was like they're at the gate, and any vehicle that goes through, they are all there to like pretend check it out and like check in the trunk and like do the whole thing. And I drove up and I was very confident, and my buddy was like in the vehicle in the passenger side, and I came up to the officer that was at the gate, and he was like, "Hey, can we pop your trunk? We're just doing an exercise, just looking in the vehicles and everything else." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And he goes in the back, and I hear some commotion, and then he pulls out this empty jar that says Red Congo that has like a fat stem on it with some, I don't even know, just little leafy leftovers. It wasn't even a bud or anything like that. And they like freaked out and it was like, "Oh my God, this is real." But like there's in my mind, I'm like, holy shit, there's like nothing there. So they arrest me, they bring me to the military police detachment center or whatever. And I'm just sitting there and they're like, "Here, you could have a phone call, talk to a lawyer." Lawyer's like, "Oh, sounds like you didn't really have anything." Yeah, just tell them no for like, just you don't really need to say anything to them because like, let's be real, there was nothing there. I was like, okay. So they just like, it was like they made like a lesson of the day out of me in that situation to like their rookies or whatever that they're trading. So they were like asking me like questions like, "So you smoke weed all the time? Who's your supplier?" Saying stuff like that. Well, it was actually really funny. And then I did tell them that like I was like, "Guys, I'm not really gonna say anything right now, so you can hold off on the questions." Because like I was at the unit for like maybe an hour, and then they're like, "Okay, you can go home." I was like, "Okay." So they drove me back to the base, and I got in my car, and that was it. But my unit was like, "Oh, we got to drug test you for cannabis to see if you're using cannabis." Because I can't do my job because I worked in the intelligence area at the time, and I couldn't be doing my job high or anything like that while I'm working with sensitive information. But I mean, so they test me, comes back positive, and basically I'm on the shit list for 6 months And then they're like, okay, but you can't use it. But like at the time, I needed to use it because everything that they would give me, like gravel or acetaminophen or like antidepressants at the time for anxiety, like all these things really fucked with me, and I hated it. Never liked how I felt. It never gave me any relief either. And the only thing that helped me have relief on my stomach, my anxiety, and just sleeping at night was cannabis. So I didn't stop. I just kept doing it, and I just waited until they drug tested me again. And at the time, I said, you know what, I'm putting in my release. I'm gonna go to BC, live with my wife's parents for a bit, and try to make it in the cannabis industry somehow. And that was around like 2017, 2018. And they drug tested me again. And they're like, hey, we're releasing you because you want to use cannabis, and we don't agree with that, basically. So it wasn't like a dishonorable discharge or anything like that. It was like unsuitable for further service because of members' beliefs, which my belief was the medical cannabis was giving me relief for whatever was troubling me at the time. And they didn't do anything to like test me, didn't do blood work, didn't do anything. So they really dropped the ball, as I later found out in life. But yeah, so they're like, you know what? We don't care that you want to use medical cannabis, which I want to highlight. At the time, I was released 1 month before legalization. So it ticked me off even more because I was like, wow, they're just like using me as an example or something. So, but I didn't care at the time because like I wasn't going to stop using cannabis. So people were like, yeah, you could have like just waited, but I just couldn't deal with any of the bullshit at the time. I didn't know I had cancer, but I had cancer at that time, like, and it was just killing me literally. And I wouldn't stop. I didn't give a shit what they thought, and I let them release me like that because I knew deep down that it was wrong. And I'm seeing later on now with like, been talking to, I have my lawyer or whatever, and the case being looked at. It's just been really good to like see things kind of turn around, because at that time it was, I had just had my first son and my wife was pregnant, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go to BC, and I'm gonna do what I've been wanting to do for the last few years. And I just did it. So it was scary though, that's for sure. But
wow,
I just knew that I had to leave. It was like, okay, I understand I'm leaving my career, that I get a full, pension benefits, and I was earning like $80,000 a year or whatever. It's like, I'm leaving that to just completely go in the opposite direction. And my wife supported me. So
when did you meet your wife?
I met her in Halifax. She's from she's from Nova Scotia, and I met her around 2016.
I went to
2015 to 2016.
I went to school in Halifax at Dow, and
you went to Dow? Oh wow!
Yeah, we'd often get into rows with the fucking boys off the ships. So,
oh man, yeah, that's hilarious.
I definitely remember. I was a doorman there for.
You like donaires?
I used to like donaires. I've kind of worn out my welcome with, and nothing beats a Halifax donaire. Like when you trap, like
it's so true.
You can't get a Halifax quality donaire anywhere else, in my opinion. But I'm sure there's a few spots.
I just miss like Halifax had like garlic fingers and donaire sauce.
Oh, the pizza quality, they just really, they've dialed in alcoholism where there was not a lot of weaponry used in altercations at night, and in the main areas, which kept it pretty PG-13, and it was just
unless you go to Pizza Corner on the weekend.
Yeah, there's some dangerous types, but everywhere. But yeah, no, I spent 5 years in Halifax, getting my degree, and
Wow, that's wild.
yeah, no,
Yeah, I was in there for about 5 years too.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
So
I loved Halifax.
your wife, your wife, you said, was from Halifax, but you mentioned that her family was from British Columbia.
So her only part of her family, she's got a small family, so just her mother and stepdad were in BC, and they
Okay.
had room available for us at their place. So they brought us in, and I got like a 4x8 tent, and I started up. I had started up with a strain called Kimberly, and found a really cool clone from that one.
How are you growing?
What?
How are you growing? Like what media?
Oh, advanced nutrients, man.
Of course, full lineup, all 11 parts. You even got booster packs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Advanced nutrients and Pro Mix. Yeah, that's how it was going. That's how I started out. And I always, like, back in high school, there was like a couple outdoor plants that we always messed around with and like did some organic stuff with, but it was never like serious on any crazy level like it was now, right?
Yeah.
So I never worked with bottles, and I was really interested in bottles, and so I was using advanced nutrients. Quickly found out, wow, it's expensive, and this is a lot of bullshit put in, but
it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, but went through the growing pains of went past that stage as a grower. Yeah. I feel like that's a stage everyone has to get past. Some people never get past it, but that's okay. They'll get there one day.
So, I mean, what would you say your next step in evolution was? You've left the military, you've moved across the country, you're with your wife's family. What's the next step after the 4x8?
The next step after that was I did some work with a brand called Theraveda, which I guess happened to be Sacred Gardens, and I helped them do some stuff. I kind of trained up on, did some BHO at the time, and I was like, yo, we got to stop with this and try. I pushed on solventless because I knew at the time I just like dabbing solventless stuff better than any BHO stuff I had at the time. Just always felt better. Always got me like, I always felt like it properly got me medicated. And like my tolerance was really high at the time because, I was fucking sick and always kept trying to get high and high to like, numb the pain or the anxiety or whatever, or help me sleep. So, and like at the time, you got kids and your sleep quality goes down. I got 3 kids now, so it's like the sleep quality goes down and shit. So
when did I remember you saying that you were pressing flower rosin in the military 2017. Mm-hmm. Who introduced you to flower rosin? Like, were you active on the forums or did you have a mentor? How did you come about flower rosin?
I came about flower rosin. I was in a Discord group called Flavortown. Also, another group was called Quad Hunters, and a part of those 2 groups, there was a man named James of Canoplates, and he was definitely my mentor into like owning a set of plates, pressing like rosin. He was just like so charismatic and energetic to like showcase this, and to like, I saw how much he loved it, and I loved it too. Like, I thought it was amazing at the time. So he was definitely my mentor. And talking with him in those Discord groups was just like like completely catapulted me, because throughout the years I'd be sailing, like, and honestly, like, just thinking about, getting out of the military eventually, doing something with cannabis. I always just wanted to do something with cannabis. And at that time, like when I discovered a lot of community around it, And when I wasn't sailing as much, so I had the time to be on like these Discord groups or whatever, because I was working. It was like a day job in the intelligence. I had the time, so I found that community of people, and they were all pressing rosin, and it was just really, it was awesome. The seeing new strains get pressed, the different colors and everything else. And
Are you doing this completely in a silo by yourself on the Discords and the forums, or do you have like a military buddy that's also ahead that like absconded with you, or like are you just is this all just you doing this research and actual face-to-face interaction?
Yeah, it's all just me, and
that's a lot to keep just to yourself for all those years while you're online doing that research.
Oh, I know it really was, but I at the time I just felt like it was best, so
yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot, that's for sure.
So things are you've come out to British Columbia, you're medicating, you're getting into the cannabis industry, you're sick, you're addressing, you're medicating now with cannabis. Do you take time to learn more about what's going on with your health?
Yeah, pretty much. It started like really going downhill as I was like starting up the pineapple. And it just kept going downhill. And I don't know. I just have a mentality in me to just kind of keep going. I've done it all my life. Just keep going, right? Like, okay, you feel a little shitty. You got a case. At the time, I was just like, okay, I got a shitty stomach. I just got to live with it. Right? Like, that's how I'd honestly just pass it up as. Like, okay, I got a shitty ass. I can't stop pooping, whatever. Right? Like, and then it got really, it did, like, so as I was starting up my brand, and then that kept, like, as I would progress further up with like pineapple, that also progressed, and they like, it was a lot to just kind of handle everything. So one day it just kind of literally just shut me down, and then that's when it all started.
So was that resulting in a hospital trip and some diagnosis and understanding of what was going on?
Yeah, I basically, there's many trips to the doctors throughout the years. I was like, hey, I got a shitty stomach. What can we do? And they'd be like, well, we can test you for this, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, but like nobody like seemed to think it was like an important issue until like not even when I was like really in pain, like only a couple of years ago, or like last year or something like that. I would be like, it all started because I passed out in a grocery store. I remember I was just picking up a few things, and I needed something out of my wallet as I was walking out of the store after I bought everything, and I just like passed out, and then woke up, puked, got in my car, drove home, told my wife that I was like, Paige, I just kind of passed out. I feel like shit. My stomach hurts. I'm going to take a nap. She's like, no, you got to go to the hospital. I was like, okay. So I go to the hospital, and they're like, they did a scan on me or whatever. And they're like, okay, you have appendicitis. We got to remove your appendix. I was like, okay, sure. Great. I'm glad there's a reason actually to why I feel like shit. It's going to get good. Great. So they take out my appendix. And then the next day it felt terrible. Like just the entire like 2 weeks after, it was like just my body was just so fucked up. And a week after, on a Saturday, like from that operation, the doctor or the surgeon at the time calls me. He's like, hi, I just have some concerning news, and I'm just wondering if your wife's around. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, she's around. And he's like, yeah, so there's like a 2.4 centimeter neuroendocrine tumor on your appendix, and we need to check if it spread throughout your body. All this stuff. Like I don't really remember the call too much because in the time I was in shock. But it was like it was almost like he didn't check his like files for a while because he like he sounded really like guilty telling me in a way that like he kind of didn't tell me in time, because it's like it was odd. It was like 1 week after, and it was just weird, right, on a Saturday night. And yeah, so I had that tumor. So he mentioned it was 2.4 centimeters. So those types of neuroendocrine tumors, they basically put off a hormone into your blood and into your guts. So the side effects are diarrhea and anxiety, depression, because it's basically pumping excess serotonin into your bloodstream. So that was basically, it's a slow growing tumor, and it lived on my appendix. And basically the lifespan they gave it was 5 to 7 years. And at the time, I was only like a couple years out of my release from the military. So, the timing and everything makes sense for all my symptoms and all the feelings that I was, having back when I was in, and why I felt like shit so much. But yeah, so basically that tumor, basically it infects your blood. If it stays long enough, your blood can kind of get permanently messed up in a way, and then it just kind of spreads throughout your whole body and whatever. So I had to have another operation to remove half a portion of my colon that was attached to my appendix, because that was also infected. And basically they had to take off some lymph nodes or whatever. So that I had that second operation of November last year. And yeah, after that, I was cancer free.
That's incredible, man. Wow. That's powerful. I mean, thank God you got out of the military, bro, because
I know.
What I mean?
No, they were killing me. They just kept wanting to send me places, and I was like, no, man, I don't feel great.
Yeah, bro, you gotta listen to your body. It's important. So
I wanted to do cool things in the military at first. I wanted to do like, special forces, like JTF2 stuff. I was like I'm 5'6". I was like 110 pounds when I joined the military. I was a runt. Oh my God. But like,
I think you're doing way cooler stuff now than any SWAT military.
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure. So, like, when I talk about it, really, I don't have any pain about it all.
Yeah.
It's just it's all come for full circle in a way. Like I said, when it comes to like how I think my release was not fair. So, working on that right now, and seeing upside to it, and it's really nice.
Awesome.
Because I thought it was bullshit at the time, and I took the bluff all the way, I guess. But like, things didn't really work out with our living situation in BC, so things got like really hard, and then my cancer came up. So it was really tough, because it's like I would be having the operations and I'd be having to make sales like afterwards, like in my hospital bed, because at the same time it's like things still have to go. I got a family to feed. So things, I didn't have like EI, workers comp, or anything. So it's like when I left the military, I gave up that safety net, if you will, of all those benefits that, like, realistically, if I had cancer and I was still in the military and it was discovered, I would have been like taken care of on every degree, really. So I guess that's why I was extra sour about it. But
yeah, no, that would have been
it was a struggle, but
so I mean, that's an incredible story. What was your next, because I know you to be growing in greenhouses now, am I correct?
Yes.
So
well, I grow inside, and I have some greenhouses.
Okay, so how quickly was that transition from a 4x8 to, what was your next evolutionary step? Was it a room, or did you go to a full greenhouse? Like, what happened next?
Well, I got creative. It was a 4x8, and it was on the deck of her parents' house. So I had a tarp over it, and I had like a heater, an AC in it, and dehumidifier, and a 4x8, and I was growing. But every crop out, I would just reinvest the money into somehow getting something bigger, more lights, blah, blah, blah. At the time, I made a bunch of LED lights because I was on that forum I mentioned earlier, Flavortown, and there's a lot of good growers in there, but a couple of them had made LED lights out of cookie sheet trays, and they were really good, cheap, and affordable, easy to make. So I did a bunch of those to save on costs, and basically once that first round of that tent came down, and once I just keep flipping them all, and basically after a couple rounds of the 4x8 tent, we moved to a different property, and it became 2 8x8 tents, and in one house, because it was basically like a vacant house at the time. And then we added another tent, and then it went to a container, and then the container went to another greenhouse outside, and then the greenhouse went to, well, another location where there's 2 much bigger greenhouses. So it seems like every like season, if you will, there's been like an upgrade in terms of like production and having to shift because of our lifestyle. And like, I have 3 kids, right? So we need a living situation that works for the family and a work situation that works for me when, I am at home a lot with the kids. So I have the benefit of hanging out with my kids often. Now they're in school, and I have a younger baby, and just he's awesome. So, I get to be close with my family, which is really nice because if I was in the military, I would not. So like I said, it's like things ended up being great in that sense because I love, getting to be with my family often. So the property that we ended up moving to just allowed a very good flexible situation for what we wanted to do. And then we found, kind of other spots that were great for our plan.
So talk to me a little bit about the evolution, because I mean, scaling up to large scale greenhouses from tents in that short amount of time, you have to be an astute individual to manage that from a variety of vectors of threats. And I think, are you KNF or Jadam?
I'm KNF, and yeah.
So what was that? What advanced nutrients to KNF? Talk to me about that evolution.
Okay, so the advanced nutrients, I was just like, man, this shit's fucking expensive, and I mean, the weed wasn't tasting great. I don't know, just wasn't tasting great. And then at the time, I was also processing like a lot of weed for a couple of brands, and they all use advanced nutrients at the time, so I could kind of like not necessarily taste it, but like I knew there was a difference between other grows and something via advanced nutrients. So I just like immediately stopped with that, and then I went to like just full on organic, but like I still had pots, and I would be
what
doing
kind of organic? Like you were mixing your own soil and then like putting it into big pots, or how are you?
Basically, what I did was like I got some super soil, and then basically I amended it and Bloom, with like some packets. It was what was the brand? I forget what they're from Ontario, but
The
they
Revive,
had
the Revive
what?
guys, the Revive.
No, it wasn't the Revive guys. Um, I forget, but it was like use 2 cups of this and Bloom, blah blah blah, right? So it's just like somebody's program,
Yeah.
but it was my introduction to organic stuff, and it was using amendments and stuff, and I just remember like the strains that I ran via advanced nutrients and switched over to the organic amendment stuff just tasted much better. My yield like went down like 25% or something like that, but I just it was my first time, so that didn't matter to me at the time. Like I really like I grew a lot for myself too. Like yes, I sold stuff, but I'm also my number one customer. Um, 'Cause I'm medicating every day at that point. So um, yeah, at that point,
How did you find Professor Cho, Master Cho?
what's that?
How did you find KNF? Like what brought you to from organic to KNF?
Oh, well, the amendments, I was making like poop teas and stuff like that. And it was just, honestly, it was just real messy. It was real messy. And, um, it's a lot of maintenance on like pumps and shit like that. And I wanted a better way to do it, but an easier way to control like what it was instead of using somebody's Bloom part one. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to dig deeper into why those amendments did what they did. And KNF, I discovered on Instagram through the World's Last Hope and KNF Garden. I took a course from KNF Garden, and I learned a lot of things from him and some of the key ferments that he taught. Um, and I never applied it at the time. I was still doing my organic amendment stuff. And then I started to like combine them, and I overpowered a lot of my plants, and I fucked up like a crop. So I just went balls deep in the KNF because I mixing the two, it wasn't good because my program is that I use carbon with every water that I use. So everything about my KNF is like I like it on the level of a commercial viability. So I can use it and scale up with it without having to worry, about scaling up with KNF, right? I'm not like this side of the KNF is more dedicated to the water soluble kind, where the other KNF can be ferments and using more like natural farming instances to improve. Whereas I'm trying to like essentially make a fermented liquid per, whatever, or or a grain or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just it gives me more control. And at the time, like I was studying a lot about cannabis. I was living and breathing it. I was consuming a lot, and I did a lot of just studying on it. And I wanted to further my knowledge and try to do something to achieve maximum flavor. Like at the time, that was the only thing that I saw that would bring me to like a realm that like nobody was kind of doing. It wasn't just like an Athena program or something like that. And nothing, no shit against Athena. I just meant like not know.
No. It's fine. Yeah, no, I mean the bottom line is even we're starting to see it in hash competitions at melting of the heads. Every single melt that podiumed was KNF input. And I think
That's awesome.
we're going to start seeing, and I know a lot of the rosins were organic and some were KNF, but every single one was KNF. So that was really like, I mean, I think that's how a lot of people are going to be led back to these organic methodologies. Um, Before we move on, I wanted to ask, did you look at uh, Jadam and consider that, or did you just find K and F?
Yeah, I consider new things every day. I'm constantly learning. I never, you know,
No, I, I think like it's just interesting when you get educated cultivators and there's two schools of thought versus the putrefaction versus fermentation
yeah,
and the lack of presence of oxygen, 2 inches below the dirt. So all this microbiology that has been worked, really hard, has been the energy that is put in to create this microbiology, won't have the environment to sustain its life beyond 2 inches from the soil. And then you've got, people who say, yeah, absolutely, but the most important activity is in that top 2 inches of the soil. So that's exactly what I'm using it for. So it's just an interesting it's a question I always like to ask cultivators who are especially versed in KNF and Jadam, and see if they have an opinion one way or another.
See, I'm just like I said, I'm always learning, and with Jajam, I'm still learning about it too, and learning about how to implement. It's like what I'm doing right now is kind of fairly easy. I'm not gonna like. I felt like I've been switching up my methods so much, right? And I felt like this year really needed to go all in and narrow down on that type of KNF, because I found I really wanted to mix different parts of it, right? And I had to commit to a program that was easy and like transferable, like aka making like water soluble nutrients that I can just bring up to the site, which was up top a mountain.
Yeah.
So that was important because we didn't have like local microbiology to like work off of. So it's like back at my area, I have like beds inside of containers, essentially grow containers, and a lot of the beds, they all have like worms, like African night crawlers, millipedes, and then I'm pretty blessed with like a local wooded area nearby that has like a lot of mycelium growth and a lot of great mushrooms, because it is on the island, Vancouver Island, and this is like some of the best mushroom hunting spot in the world. Hello.
I know a lot of people have problems with airflow in those containers. Is that something that you experience growing in those sea cans?
I experienced it, but I definitely have a great little system. Okay, so if you will, imagine just like a 40-foot container. I have two 16-foot long beds, and they're basically conjoined. So they're in the center of the container. And then I basically have two airflow systems that go this way, just at the bottom. Like I had fans all up top, but I felt like I was getting a lot of wind damage and stuff happening on all the buds or whatever. So I didn't like that. I felt like it was too cluttered. So those two airflow systems, just like a great high CFM stream down the yeah. And then I basically midway, I have a 3.5 ton AC unit, and then on each end there's a Andon 210. So the airflow is really great at the moment, and I haven't had issues since. It's like a perfect revolving,
That's awesome. So how long have you been cultivating specifically for resin? I mean, you came out of the military already pressing flower rosin. So were you always cultivating for extraction?
Not always. I never had the room or the setup to do it in Halifax at the time, and So that's, that's kind of why we wanted to move to BC. There wasn't really much of the like community and like back where I was in Halifax for cannabis, and maybe there was at the time, but I just couldn't wasn't gelling, or I don't know, right? I just wasn't where I saw myself doing what I was gonna do.
So when was it when you got to BC when you started cultivating for the purpose of solventless extraction?
Yeah, and then that's it. I always did. Hash rosin was just like the best thing to smoke at the end of the night during the day. Literally, it just was the best kind of meds I needed at the time. And I found it was just, flower's great and all, but I don't know, something about the getting that taste from the rosin is just different. Just different.
Were you looking for cuts at the time, or were you looking for seeds to pheno hunt through?
I wanted seeds to pheno hunt. I wanted to find my own thing and be confident about it to like, help me grow as a person, an entity at the time. Try to find something special and show it off.
What prompted you to start pineapple? Like, what made you feel as though the best course forward was to have that branded?
Well, I wanted to like show off what I was doing, my presses, my flower rosin presses at the time. And I was trying to think of something like a name for the brand. And my wife, Paige, she loves pineapples. And, at the time she was like, you're always reading about weed. You're always reading about this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, well, I'll name my brand after what you love. And then you can help me out with it too. And so she was the inspiration for the pineapple part. And then I was a solventless pineapple at the time. And I just wanted to like show off my presses and and just really find exotic weed and press it all. Like find Congo and press it. Fucking love Congo. Find, I'd be like, oh, I got to save up to buy this $280 ounce on whatever website it was. And couldn't wait to press it, and then you press it and then you get like one dab off of it. You're like, fuck. And then after that I was like, man, I love all this crazy weed, but like it's like none of it's good for this press, and there's got to be better things that you can press and better ways to enjoy rosin than like spending $280 on a fancy ounce and pressing it and getting, fuck off.
For sure. So like what did that look like? Like who showed you how to wash? Was it online through videos and forums, or was it somebody actually with you in the room?
A lot of it was online and through the forums. I had a couple good friends that also washed hash, and they just told me about their setups. And I just learned a lot online. I asked a lot of people. I would ask at the time, Tom Cruise of rosin. I asked him like a couple things early on in the day. I was like trying to build up my thing while he was building up his thing. Nathan from Living Organics. Yeah, Loto. And I asked him a lot of stuff. He was like definitely my inspiration at the time for like really having a high quality hash, like doing things organically and having a high quality hash to show for it. So that was definitely my major inspiration for like wanting to go the high quality route instead of like the yields route, special things with, respect
wash
flavors.
Were you washing live material?
Yeah, I was actually, I lucked like back to when that operation I was in with Theraveda, I had a lot of live material to work with. I did try dry. I tried dry sifting. I made like I didn't make it. My wife's stepdad made like a tumbler that we used. And I just like the live better. Just at the time. To be fair, in hindsight, it probably wasn't like dried to the how I would do it, right? Like it was not great how it was dried anyway. So, um, no knock on dry sift or washing cured material is what I'm saying. It was just at the time the live was just like much better, and I was like, yeah, this is the way to go. Blah blah blah. But at the time, I was like driving 2 hours up to Nanaimo and driving 2 hours back. Like that's 4 hours of driving a day, and I do like 8 9 hours of washing. And at the time, that's when I had my cancer in me, and my wife was pregnant, and we had to she we already had a kid, and we were just kind of living in a small little room. But it's excelled since then, and I'm thankful for it for sure.
Damn, made it work. Well, I mean, you're definitely in a good place now. So, what, how quickly did you get? Did you know that was that ice water extraction was something that you wanted to invest heavily in and pursue with great vigor?
Well, I realized with BHO you can kind of like anything can produce like a respectable result in the whole grand scheme of things, right? Like when you're running certain strains, yes, there'll be variances of yields or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's not like how solventless where it's like you can have a ghost wash, on something and nothing comes out, right? Like that happens, and I just felt like it was more competitive. So I don't know, I felt like it was not so heavily explored at the time, and it was even more competitive than BHO. So that interested me a lot. Never mind the fact that I enjoyed smoking it the most, but like outside of that, I also was like all for the idea of something just being more competitive and working hard to find certain genetics that people would love specifically for hash consumption and rosin and all that.
So was it? Did you want to make rosin? Was it? I mean, you were making flower rosin, but was hash the goal originally when you first?
When I switched over from hash, it was like an instant like see ya to the flower rosin idea. It was obviously it's just much more pure and everything about it, right? But obviously it's harder to do because unless you have like a grower with like live material all the time, otherwise you got to do it all yourself, right? So I was trying to upsize like my grow for demand as it scaled up, and yeah.
I know that feeling absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what your lab looks like today. What kind of bags do you run?
I use Rosin Evolution bags. I love the all mesh bags. I'm a like I I was washing a lot, and it was just me for a lot of the time. I recently have had a few more additions to my team, which have greatly helped me out the last year. But at the time, I needed like the all mesh bags were great because I'm a small guy, and when you get dumpers or whatever with the what, like I had the Bubble Man bags to start with, so it's like when you get a dumper with those, it's like, and the 20 gals at that, it's just like a lot of so,
Oh yeah.
And at the time, unbeknownst to me, I had cancer, so I was like, fuck, this is hard. And after like doing it every day for weeks and weeks with the other program I had in Nanaimo, it was killing me. So the all mesh bags are a game changer. I love them. You just got to stay on top of getting new bags. They're cheap enough that like you don't have to baby them like the ice extract bags.
Yeah.
They're sick bags too. I would use those, but the Rosin Evolution for me, they're just I think Ice didn't have all mesh bags. That's why I didn't like go even think that route for a while. But I think they have all mesh bags now, and quite honestly, like I would love to try those out. I bet those are pretty baller. But for now, the Rosin Evolution bags have done me well.
There you go. There you go. Do you double up on any bags? Do you run any unique bag sets?
No, typically, like just my favorite is the 73 and the between the 160. Recently with all the outdoor, I don't even do the 160. It's just 190. Had a lot of gold come up in the 160 bag, so I've been including it. It's just in the outdoor stuff though. I don't find it as heavy yielding that bag inside.
So is that just consistently you're seeing your cultivars yielding larger gland sizes in the outdoors?
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and in comparison to indoors, it's definitely night and day in that micron range for sure. So all my outdoor stuff, I just make to 73 to 189 spectrum. And to me, like I used to always mess around with just getting only 90U and only this. But like, unless you're really putting in the work to isolate each one and see which flavor is complementary to the other or is potent or is worthy to be mixed in or doesn't even need to be separated, at the end of the day, that spectrum just kind of, if you grow it right and it's a good genetic and it's got good flavor, that spectrum is going to give you pretty much the best taste of everything. So I just kind of left it at that because at the time, it's a lot of organizing too, and jar organizing when you have because I'm definitely like a strain whore, and like I have like 10 or 20 different strains because as a consumer I like having different, like I like variety, so that's how I grow. I like to have a lot of variety.
Do you think that's consistent across all strains?
The increase in size?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say all strains yet. I'm still learning more about it. But some strains that I have been near and dear growing for a couple years that give, have been giving me this better result. They have been for the most part. So far it's still a learning method. And especially it's like at what time, does a full term like give you the best heads? Can you still get those size heads with the light depth? Like there's just many things I'm still trying to trial with.
Totally.
But yeah, there's definitely a few strains where the 160 really shines, and I usually say that for myself to smoke.
Interesting. So how do you like to wash? Are you washing with are you hand washing primarily, or do you have any experience on any of these commercial vessels?
So I'm currently hand washing, and we're doing it out of Bruteless. I was using wash machines for a while, like just 20 gal bubble washer, 5 gal bubble washer for pheno hunts, but yeah, I'm still hand washing now, so I haven't had much of any experience with any other commercial vessel yet. If I had a choice in getting any of them, it would definitely be one of the hashtags that are made in Canada. And I'm already trying to assemble that and get that together so I can get one of those in the coming new year, because I've done a little bit of research on all of them and nothing like really inspired me to want me to buy it and get it for my situation now. Hand washing just kind of was still, good and easy, good quality. And, it was just like, I'm not fixing anything that's not broken at the moment. So, sure. But if I had my eyes on anything, it's that hashtag setup.
Hashtag's a great machine, man. I just picked one up myself. Make sure when you talk to Alex, you tell him Hashquatch sent you. He'll hook it up. He has a little special deal for people who drop the Hashquatch name.
But yeah, I just got a Bruteless set up right now, and I got another like a container that I fully set up and plumbed and made into like a cold container essentially. So that's a nice little work area. And yeah, I'm happy with it right now. And
That's awesome. So let me ask you, I want to talk a little bit about melt. You sent me some incredible air dried melt. I, what are your observations as somebody who originally air dried and then I'm sure now has access to multiple freeze dryers? What are you seeing when you're looking at those two finished products put through those two different processes?
well, when you air dry it, it's definitely much like the fragrance of the terps I find is definitely a little louder. But that's just me recently, in my opinion. Um, but you just think the process of the freeze dryers, right? And the quality of the melt that comes out of it, it can be really nice and it can be great. But I think at the end of the day, if you did a batch and air dried it, did a batch and freeze dried it, and then pressed both of those, the rosin and the air dry will come out with better testing numbers. Maybe not by a lot, but from what I've seen, at least like a 0.4 in terpenes, 0.5, but at the end of the day, that's like, in consideration of the total terpenes of that rosin, it could be like 5 or 10%, but that could be a big improvement at the end of the day, for certain
That's
things.
significant.
Yeah, because like I got two of my full melts tested. I got my Drago tested, and it was 10.3% terpenes, and the rosin was 9.6 or something like that. So those were both sun-grown KNF. One was air dried, and the other was freeze dried and pressed. So there's that, and then I had a Runts air dried melt I got tested, and that was my highest terpene. It was 11.9% terpenes on the 73 to 189 melt. And yeah, that was definitely the highest of the batch for the batches I got tested.
Interesting. Well, there's definitely the only thing that I can equate it to is what must be lost during the exposure to that minimal heat and pressure of the press. Those terpenes and whatever else is lost definitely creates some form factor of an effect that is more intoxicating, I find, than rosin in some instances. And I know not everybody agrees with me. It's a pretty hotly discussed topic, this rosin versus melt, but I can definitely say that there's, for me, more of a medicinal narcotic effect from melt than rosin. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I think it's very strain dependent for me. There's definitely melts I prefer of a genetic versus the rosin, and vice versa. I see. I was just like I wanted to get into this to make high quality cannabis. So it's like, to me, if you have like a high quality BHO and it's just amazing, like say it was like Congo vape pen, or like a, you know what I mean? Like a Kind Selections Congo or something like that, whatever. They're amazing. I love those. Like I'll smoke those all day. I'm not going to put that up a battle up against solventless, or, you know what I mean? I'm not picking sides. So when it comes to the melt and rosin, I just love them both equally. And I think air drying just brings like a whole new challenge to the method for me. Whereas like, oh yeah, I got my freeze dryer melt, but like, is that the best way? Is that the best treatment for the heads? Like, is that, like if you think about the process, is that how you want the process to go for your like food? Do you think that's, you know what I mean? Like naturally drying something out versus like, freezing something and dehydrating it. I'm sure there's just like, I've also seen a couple of people talk about how they would drain their freeze dryers of like a wash, and there would be terpenes that were developed in the water
Yeah.
right? And there's even ways to like seal them off or whatever. So it's like just right there, that kind of goes to show that like, yeah, there's definitely some off gassing of terpenes that happen. So at the end of the day, if you're trying to make the highest quality product and you want like a killer like test result, I would say air dry your stuff and press it, you know, if you're trying to like get your numbers up or something. But because I think that's how you'll maximize your quality of rosin
Yeah.
is at the end. Or if your freeze dryer is perfect, I'm sure it won't be off, and I'm sure it's worthy of still testing. But under
Speaking of perfect freeze dryers, what are your shelf temps?
the shelf temps, the shelf temps, I think we're just doing 35.
35? Yeah. That's kind of right around. There's some people that go lower, but it takes a lot longer.
Takes a lot longer. Yeah, it's like I did 35. I like to say I switch it up, and it's like realistically, I've done 45, and the 35, I haven't seen any crazy difference, but I usually float around there. I never go over
Yeah.
any 45 at all, though. That's for sure.
What are your thoughts on fresh press? Is it something that you're a big fan of, being a renaissance man of the air dried melt? Does that fall in line with that, or what are your thoughts on fresh press?
Well, with fresh press, I find that's also another strain dependent thing too. I don't like it. It just doesn't develop the full flavor. You can have like really good like fresh presses from like the Kushes and stuff, like the animal mints or like the animal cookies, like that kind of, or like GMO fresh press, like those ones, like those terpenes have like are really expressive as fresh press still. Whereas like if you do like any papayas or any more complex strains, I find it just isn't fully developed enough and doesn't have that flavor profile that I want and doesn't have that like effect that I want. Because at the end of the day, if the rosin isn't cured out, like it kind of like the fresh press, it's, I don't want to say energetic, but like definitely gives you a tingle. And I'd much rather prefer something cured and matured. So I know people don't like the word cured for that type of process, but let's say it's matured into a flavor I like, and you know, kind of like the natural process of like when you cut a plant down and you hang dry it and cure it, right? That's like the process that the trichomes are going through so that they're ripe for consumption. So at the end of the day, when you're letting your rosin mature, in my eyes, they're kind of going through the same development and giving you that like end texture and flavor, potency, or whatever that you really need. Versus live, it just isn't. This hasn't had time to gel, literally, and like mix and become what it's supposed to.
Have you ever? I'm laughing at your pup snoring there.
Oh, this guy he had a tumor and he is cancer free. Just want to say.
That's awesome.
He's like 4 months old, so he fucking better have been cancer free. I would have been pissed.
Oh man, that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear. So yeah, the curing of the resin gland. Have you played around with any partial dry tech, Jesus tech, stuff like that? What are your thoughts there?
Recently, my papaya BX and my runts. I hang dried for about 14 days, 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 degrees humidity. It was actually 55 humidity, fluctuation, whatever. Not that it matters. But I hang dried both of those, like all of those plants. And then I also put them in my cold room, and after that they had like lower temperatures and very low humidity too, so I froze them even a little bit more, and then I basically sniffed them carefully into the turkey bags or whatever so that I could pre-freeze them for a little bit, and then made air dried melts out of them to see if they were more stable in the structure of like the heads. And I found that at the end of the day, some strains will do better and some strains just won't. You know, the stability though, it definitely increases versus a freeze dryer melt stability, and that's like absolutely for sure. Like some strains are so good that they'll stay, pebble like in that form at room temperature and very, easy to work with or whatever. Whereas the others might melt into clusters and become little hash boulders, you know? Uh, so, yeah, I just been really digging the air dried melts. I've just been like teaching myself how to do it, like if I needed to do it commercially. And it's like, how can this not be a skip stage? Like, there's no way somebody can tell me that we can't do this scaled up a bit. So I've been just toying with
That's
that.
awesome, because I know not a lot of people are thinking like that, but it takes real connoisseurs like ourselves to think like that. If I recently talked with Kaya from Pacific Northwest Roots, and he's harvesting in a freezer and then freezing the branches on cookie racks and
Oh,
then
nice.
fucking into the bags. And he's like, yeah, and I'm hitting like 9 to 11% on GMO, and I'm like, yeah, there's the 2%, like there it is right there. And
I
so it's
agree.
like taking those care and finding those ways to. I mean, this is that I put it back in the freezer, but the product, which I will show, is not what I smoke, is absolutely incredible. It's visually so.
Hold on, I'm gonna go grab a jar myself. Hold on.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean it's quite appealing and beautiful. I mean, it's melted down. I definitely didn't I left it out a little bit today, but it's absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, I was really impressed. I mean, you sent over the Drago as well as the runts and the GMO, and that was incredibly special. Bear with us. We're just grabbing some terps. I'm surprised you didn't have some terps on the table, man.
Well, I I didn't have the strain I wanted on the table.
Oh.
I got this Pido right here, and I don't know.
Yeah, beautiful.
So the Pido is like animal cookies, grape pie, star dog, or some crazy cross. It's nice. I love it. It's currently like my favorite like strain to have in melt form.
So are you I want to ask you about resin mixing and blending.
Yeah.
It's something that we're starting to see a tremendous amount of. It's something that I think is going to become more and more prevalent, especially on the commercial side. Is that something that you're a fan of and perform?
Resin. Well, here I have a thing with resin mixing, and I think like with lab results, like say, speaking back to my runts and like that lab result and how I told you that spectrum of 73 to 189. Like I think about like mixing. If I mixed another strain, my terpene result would be higher. So I think with a lot of these strains that are being mixed on the legal market and like, and they're going off like cannabinoid profiles, I really think that a lot of them either have like 45U which is like a lot of broken down like heads and stocks. So that would like increase, technically that would increase your analytical score if that was included in your sample, right? Because they're not just sampling for like, oh, you know, how does this taste and flavor? It's, you know what I mean? Like all those analytics would still come up in favor of get a higher score. So I think even when you're mixing different strains with different terpenes and different cannabinoids, and they all conclude together and have a higher score, it's being misrepresented as like a high quality product when essentially it very well could not be. And it's just like a bunch of stuff just mashed together that gets good numbers or something like that. But I think like when you get into mixing like two rosin strains, like maybe one strain that is very like has like a dull undertone or something, and then you mix in a different rosin that kind of like, I don't know, some papaya something, and it kind of increases the flavor tremendously. You know, it's like you get into stuff like that, and it's like, sure, as long as there's transparency to it, and mentioning that it is a mix of two strains, and not that, you know, like I said, not that analytics on mixed strains should go that far in terms of like proving its worth of, you know, smokability.
It's interesting you talk about it like that with the Canadian system being the way it is and having those issues. I think that, you know, the like having that recognition in the Canadian market is really what's lacking. Like it's not. How has what were your expectations of Canadian legalization in 2018 as you were exiting the military, like versus what
You
actually transpired?
Honestly, my expectations was they were going to be friendly to people wanting to join, and you know, but it was red tape everywhere, and unless you got $1 million and prime real estate, so I was like, damn, I gotta hustle hard to get that. So you know, my expectation, not that I was expected to be given like something, more so along the lines of like finding respectable work and being paid what I'm worth, and not just being like a tech monkey at some you know, some grow.
Yeah.
You know, I needed people with the same values that wanted quality, that weren't just like not, it's like some guys like didn't smoke, and like that was just like a little strange to me. Like, yeah. So, you know, that was my expectation of people in the industry who didn't smoke. I didn't really, it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a large disconnect with the plant if it's not part of your everyday life that some people think that can be overcome, but I really think there's only very few and far between circumstances where that really takes place, because it's that extra care that anybody with a relationship with the plant would take, regardless of pay, of anybody watching or anything like that, that, you know, somebody without a relationship with the plant wouldn't. And so I think that as the industry matures, more and more companies are going to realize that, and more companies are going to see, you know, the value in the individual that does have that relationship with the plant. You know, I want to talk about, you know, your brand and what your plans are as you move things forward. Like, you know, I hear you working on commercialization of air dried melt, which warms the cockles of my heart, because I think, you know, the current Canadian system is has a lot of issues, and having somebody like you, right now. Yeah, they couldn't handle it, but having somebody like you thinking about it makes me feel good, though.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be prepared for that for sure. Yeah. I don't think of it as a Canada level thing. I think of international shipment of air dried material, like air dried hash, is definitely viable. At the end of the day, like I'm pretty competitive with myself, and like Canada is amazing. I love everything about it, but obviously we have an international aspect to hash, and my goals is to when I am fully integrated at where I want to be with my brand in terms of like how I want to go about the market. I want to make sure that, you know, I can have like an international capability and outlet. I think that's important to look for in a partnership right now. So I try to align myself with people who have similar interests of quality, that want to just give me the stage and be like, okay, do what you're doing here. Like, how do you do it? Okay, let's, like, okay, like I see, you know, trust, I guess.
Yeah,
So
it's really interesting getting to travel and talk with a lot of people and a lot of and meet a lot of connect with a lot of people in the US. How one thing that's very unique to Canadians, both in the legacy and the legal space, that is rare in individuals in the US space, is the ability to really put your head up and see this thing on a more global scale. There's a lot of individuals who are operating who, just because they've only ever been able to operate within the constraints of their state, really have a hard time looking outside of their state. And when they do look outside of their state, they just look to the confines of their country. And we as Canadians really understand, like, you know, we're living up here. We've got way more land than we've got people. And we know that, you know, there's more people in California than there are in Canada, but we are able to legally move cannabis and cannabis brands anywhere in the world, whereas the US is not. So I think that there's a lot of value to you being in the traditional market and seeing that ability. I mean, you've got guys like Todd from Rosin Heads, who I bring up almost every episode, and he was the Canna chocolatier, like, way back, and he understood. He was a medical patient. He understood the community. He was part of the culture. He created an incredible brand. He then went and worked inside one of the worst belly of the beast corporate companies that you could pick in Canada, left there after being offered an upgraded, cushier job to go start Rosin Heads. And within a year, Rosin Heads is in the legal market. Wow. And so I think that, you know, we're going to start seeing all these Canadian brands that don't have affiliations with legacy players start realizing, oh, we need to go get our date to the dance, because no marketing team can create what that individual has created out of his basement. We don't know how to do it. We've thrown money at it and we can't figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, guys like me step in and see those opportunities and try and help individuals like you. And I think that, you know, people who have held out, people who have pushed harder into the legacy space, or into, you know, I know a lot of us slowed down on October 17th, 2018. And I think that in hindsight, a lot of us wish we would have not slowed down and possibly even pushed harder in that traditional market, because, you know, the far sight is going to be that, you know, those individuals who stayed in and held fast are probably going to have brands that survive the test of time, because I don't think that in 5 years any single cannabis consumer or bud tender is going to be able to name any brand that is out today, save for the brands, like, you know, that are from the legacy space that we can actually track over. So I think, you know, I think that there's a huge opportunity, and I think it's really cool that you're thinking about it on a global scale, because I think that's where it's going. I think cannabis culture and plant medicine is definitely on the rise, and I think that the, like, true to form, real brands that resonated with consumers are the ones that are going to be,
I agree,
courted by these large companies. So it just takes some time. I want to talk a little bit about, you've touched a little bit about on your cultivars that you grow, but I want to kind of talk about your stable that you keep. I know you mentioned the runts. You've got a couple of cookie crosses. Are there any, the Drago, which is absolutely exceptional, which has, I think, forbidden fruit crossed to GMO.
Yeah, it's a forbidden fruit back cross, and then cross with GMO. And then, yeah, like the Tallyman. Tallyman's been like a gigantic favorite amongst people and myself. That's been an absolute workhorse of the strain next to Drago. Kimberly was really great for me for a while. I lost a lot of cuts when I was sick too. I had a tough time being in the garden. And when I had my operations, my Paige was pregnant. And when she's pregnant, she has like a condition called HG. So she gets super sick. So there's like just a big block of time where I was just like, my plants are just like dying, just trying their hardest. But, I lost a lot in that battle. And, but I saved some and I got some back. So, and, whatever,
That's
just
great.
Just keep hunting. I got lots of seeds. So I was just back at it, right? Finding more stuff and acquiring more genetics from other people.
Are there any specific breeders that you like to work with more than others?
I mean, I love Bloom. Like, let's be real. Like, the guy's got some great hashers with some great quality. I really like Bloom. I really like First Class Genetics. He is a breeder himself, and he has bred a lot of the Khalifa Kush, his version of it. His lines, they've been great in my findings recently for when it comes to seeds and quality. But other than that, I really liked exotic genetics for a while. Still do. He gets a lot of hate, but all those big guys usually do. At the end of the day, lots of other breeders use his work for stuff. Man, those are probably like my top ones for sure. Sea Junkie, of course. Yeah, they're great.
There. Yeah, everybody can have their own opinion on Seed Junkie, but yeah, that so going forward, like, do you think that genetics will become more tightly held and that's going to help what distinguishes a hashmaker's brand, or do you feel as though that doesn't matter and genetics will be passed back and forth?
I think they got to be passed back and forth. I don't think it's up to a brand necessarily to, like, sure, you can keep your strain a secret and never pass it out and make your brand off that. That's totally fair. I just believe in the method of, you know what, you need to be fully integrated in your processes of, okay, I'm going to give out Drago, but if I don't already have a seed stock of Drago crosses, then I'm going to hunt out myself to find the next up better version of Drago, or to find something just better. Like, I just always have to have a plan so that I'm, okay, I'm giving this strain away, but I also did the due diligence to make sure that I can find something better, and I'm never truly competing with anybody in terms of like strain releases or anything like that. And I never have to worry about it.
You keep,
because I always have to
stay one step ahead. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think that, as you're the creator, you have that right. But I think, you're starting to see with the rise in HVLD and other pests and pathogens being passed from garden to garden, that a lot of guys are shutting down and not taking stuff. And a lot of guys are hunting from seed. And I think that we're going to start seeing
hunting from seeds even better. Everyone needs to go out and discover something even better, right? Like, everyone has a chance to, and it's great. Like, you truly find something awesome and that you're proud of when you hunt out something and find something better than some breeder cut elsewhere. I've definitely taken lots of cuts, but I've taken in lots of cuts from two sources I have in the States. And recently one of them had to completely, like, he had problems with like HLVD. So he got like a testing system, partnered with like a tissue culture lab, and now he gets like clean cuts or whatever. And that's First Class. And he's pretty much my main source if I need that new flavor or something that I want, or something I want to like hit with some pollen or something, make my own seeds out of, make a new cross. I definitely don't try to ask people or take in too many cuts from anybody else though,
For sure.
because that's the only way I can control it. Like, is knowing that I bleach my tools and do my burn and due diligence every time, is enough.
As someone who's spent a considerable amount of time with plants and has created seed stock, where do you feel as though we're getting close to the limitations on what the possibilities of yields are for solventless extraction with these plants, or do you feel like there's still much more to go?
I don't know. I think there's certain limitations we can be realistic in pressing, but I also think a lot of the time has to deal like high percentages in soil moisture content and like how the plant's harvested, right? Like there's so much varying things for percentages that like I don't think we can get too crazy with it. You know what I mean? Like, unless you got a really dry medium when you're harvesting, and maybe that plant lost a lot of its moisture content or something like that.
You're in Rockwell and you didn't water for a week, and then
and then you harvest and you're like, oh man, I got 12%. And it's like, okay, well, it's because it's pretty much dry. But
I think me personally, I think we're pretty close to maxing that plant out. But I know some people definitely feel as though there's a lot more room. So
I feel like there's wiggle room, but the hardest part is consistency.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that no businessman likes about cannabis is when they want that batch to batch consistency, and you as a cultivator, like, you don't understand, like, it's a different time of year. The building reacts differently to that, and that subsequent reaction of the building affects the room. And
man, it's like I've been light depping my greenhouses, right? So we did 2 rounds and 2 different environments, essentially, one part of summer and the other part of summer. So they finished, to my eyes, differently. I haven't finished processing everything yet, but it is crazy to see, and it varies so much. Like the inside too, right?
In Humboldt, they like Kanjana Extracts, who actually runs the Tallimon. He does spring, and he puts it on his jars. It's the spring, it's the summer.
Yeah, does he? See, that's cool. I want to do that. I like him. They're I really like their just everything about
their vibe is right.
Yeah, their livelihood, energy, the knowledge, the pursuit of like just like melty hash, I'm all for it. Yeah, they're great.
Have you done any research or played around with rosin pens at all, or is that something that you're not really, like, jams post production like that, or is that something that
I used to do some jams, like it was like back pre-COVID, maybe 2019 or whatever. I like released some jams, and they're always nice, but nothing. I never perfected it in any way that I found that I enjoyed consuming. So I didn't like it. I just stopped doing it, even though some people were like, "Oh no, it's good," and it's like, well, I don't know. I really don't think it was good. I really like something about decarbing past a certain process. Just that taste. I just don't like it. Hate it. So, if I hit your rosin pen and I taste any sort of decarbness, I don't want it. Like, it's bad to me, and I don't release pens because I'm not gonna lie to you, I haven't perfected a vape pen that I myself was like, yeah, this is fucking fire.
Yeah.
And some people are like, well, you got to lower your expectations when it comes to vape pens. But I've had a couple vape pens from Wizard Rosin or whatever in the States, and it was really good, and it was no decarb taste, and I knew it was possible. So I had hope. but I don't see it around Canada yet. I haven't tried everyone's vape pens, so nobody take that personally if they, just nobody hate me or anything like that. But when it comes to the rosin vape pens, yeah, there's not many I've liked, and there's only like a couple I've liked that were from America that were just like done right. Because if that decarb taste is in your jam or in the carts at all, like even a smidge, and I'm over it. It just like it. I don't know, something about the effects or something. Like I never liked smoking distillate for like the same reason that kind of vibe I get from like decarb rosin. So
Yeah.
it just
I
like doesn't jam with my body. I don't know. Like I hate the effects of it, literally. And the taste, I can taste it, and then it's like something in my mind gets triggered that it sucks. So like straight up. So unless I can do amazing vape pens that don't taste decarb, and if I release them, then you know that they taste good.
it's going to be good. That's too. So let me ask you, are you working with anybody in the legal Canadian space? Are you doing any consulting work? Like, do you have plans to move into the space? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm working with Charlie's right now, Charlie's Cannabis Co. Right now, I essentially am on their board, and we set up their solventless department for in their processing room at their facility that they have in Ontario. So I've been back and forth between the provinces to see it come, to fruition. They had some major upgrades recently that they wanted to fill me in on. So basically, we're getting them, like I'm getting them set up to be fully integrated to harvest, chop for fresh frozen, and you know, make make some solventless products.
That's awesome. So
Yeah,
are you setting the lab up but not running the lab, or what's the
I'm
plan
gonna run
with
the
that?
lab, and I'm going to it'll be slow paced at first,
Of
of
course.
course, with their first crop and everything. But yeah, I'm gonna be running things, and then more than likely, like getting a team assembled to work the process, and we'll see what else is on the table for their projection in terms of like canopy space. Because at the end of the day, it's all dependent on how much canopy space we have as an operator, how many times we're going to harvest, and how many times I'm needed or the solventless team is needed, what genetics, it's just like wrapping their minds around my mind of hash production in terms of not flower production. You know what I mean? Like shopping for flower, blah blah blah, and
Yeah.
like what they look out for, what's needed in terms of cultivation for that. So, I like them a lot because I've been approached by a number of other brands before, but nobody ever kind of like gelled with my vision or like didn't trust it or whatever. And so they kind of they like
Yeah.
what I produce, what I cultivate, what flowers I've given them, and what genetics I have to offer, and my method of processing to benefit the SKUs that they want to deliver to the medical
That's so
society.
awesome, man. I'm super stoked to hear that. I think that
Yeah,
Clint has built a really good team and put together some really good individuals, and we all know he enjoys his cannabis. There's
yeah. He likes his
nobody
weed.
is gonna say he doesn't.
But honestly, it's back in Ontario, and I haven't lived in Ontario in like 10 years, right? Since I joined the military. So I'm excited at the idea to go back to Ontario because I can do because my goal is to run my own light dep facility. Like I want like a souped up like how I have my light deps now. I want them like that so I can operate what I'm doing now via the KNF grow on a commercial scale. I want to do that in Ontario, just so I have more control of the rosin, and I'm confident that like the hash per square footage of what I want set up as a start is ideal. And everyone's like, with the perfect genetics, obviously grown right, the right percentages, it's like at the end of the day you can get by and hope for better. So it's just, you got to do what you got to do. So having the best numbers and the best genetics is like kind of the only way to do it. Like, I understand people are like, yeah, but like you get those 2% washers that are just amazing terps. But it's like, okay, but we're not at that.
Yeah.
Like, we're not there yet. And we can pivot to that for sure in the future when things change, which obviously I really hope they do. In terms of
But
like
by the time we get there, by the time we get to the future, we'll have found that flavor profile in a more commercially viable cultivar. Like, it's our job to open up those 2%ers into 4%ers. So if it's but it's a 2%. Okay, well, that's for you to grow in your garden, and that's your choice. But I'm going to grow this, and it's going to yield twice as much as you yield every turn. So every turn, when you finish your press and you do your collections and you look at your jar and you go to take a picture of it, I want you to think of me having 2. And then they go, oh. And they go, yeah. And then over 5 years, that's 5 times more, 5 more jars. You have 5 jars, I have 10. So, I think that
I agree
that the commercial side of this thing is real. And we have to understand that, what's 3% is viable, very viable commercially today. In 5 years or in 3 years, it won't be. It will be 4%. It will be, don't come to me if it's not 4% off the press. And we'll have come up with a much better way to judge yields. And I think that that's going to have to do with an active water number, because I don't think that without a water activity number to act as a variable on the fresh frozen material that is then compared against the output, it's like we talked about before, are they coming out of a soaking wet Hugel, or are they coming out of dry Rockwell? Because those yields aren't
like a living soil bed that's still moist.
Are you measuring the loose resin? Are you measuring what came off the press? Are you measuring the 45 to the 220? Are you measuring the 70 to the 159? We're not comparing apples to apples. And the thing is nobody even knows what the rules are to break it. You go, well, what do you mean? And the guy will go, well, what do you mean?
I don't want to be wrong.
So I think we have to come up with a system. I think it's resin per square foot. I think it's rosin per square foot.
I agree.
If you're making rosin, and I think it's melt per square foot if you're making melt. I think that's and per square foot of viable canopy space, not grow room.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that getting guys like yourself and, seeing Kind Selections and other individuals, Slurm and even, Bubbleman and all these guys.
I love Slurm. Slurm helped me out when I was sick big time and helped me process harvest for me.
Shout out to those boys. I'm excited to have Connor and Ark on.
Connor, another Connor. Yeah. There's been like a lot of discovery of Connor hash makers recently for me. It's been a little strange, but yeah, shout out to Slurm. Those guys are amazing.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you, man, as we kind of start to wrap things up, like, what advice do you have for people that want to follow in your footsteps and go on that journey and get into cannabis and become a brand? What advice do you have for them in the Canadian space today?
You got to just document it all in a way that, like, if you want to get noticed, if you want to build something, you need something attractive that people want to look at and spend their time a day. Well, why am I going to look at your profile? Like, why am I going to care about you as a brand? What are you going to give me different? Like, unless you're coming from like an angle of money, then you just do the easy thing, which is like mass produce something that's already being done. Or if you come the angle of, like, say, having less funds, people get creative, and, you can find better things through seeds and stuff like that, and not necessarily worrying about what someone's doing now. Because usually if you go to do what someone's doing now, then that person or that brand or however or whoever's in your way might already be on to the next thing. And, you know, you just gotta, whether you're doing it for money or quality or both, like you just gotta realistically be true to and not bullshit yourself when you're doing it, right? And that'll give you the easiest attitude to handle everything. But I would definitely recommend everyone to hunt their seeds. That's for sure. Try and find new genetics, like new flavors. Everyone wants something new, man. Like, yeah, you can do the classics. Yeah, you can do Pink Kush because it was really good. And yeah, you can do, you know, whatever Runt's cut and it's going to be good. But like, if you want to separate yourself from others and get ahead, then you need something a little bit more. And you need to find some gems in all the packs that are out there right now. And there's lots of brands that are putting out fire. And thankfully, we've had like a shift in like people specifically breeding with dumpers and like hash phenos, and really all the materials are out there right now. It just takes a lot of people to be committed to go through a hunt, which is, you know, pretty tedious at the end of the day. And but I do recommend it to anybody who is just trying to get their brand forward, or they want to start a brand, or even just grow for their own reason. Hunting through some seeds, you'll learn a lot of things, and it's fun. Keeps it fun.
How you know, as the cultivators listening would be remiss if I didn't ask, how after all these years have you found hunting to be the easiest for you? Like, what's your methodology when you go about a pheno hunt?
Now my favorite is like I got beds inside, right? So putting them in the beds is really nice because they got a lot of root room. So you get a lot of good true expressions from the plants. And it's just easy. It's, you know, it's all easy when it's not like, okay, I got 50 different phenos. So I got 50 different one gals. Okay, let me attach irrigation to all of them. Okay, some of them are feeding a little different than others. Some of them are this. It's like, okay, well, if we just put it in like a, you know, a good bed that's moist all the time, and you know, I got like a lot of activity in my beds, so things are moving along in there, so everybody gets fed equally, and they just like, it's like they're all given the same thing. And if they're all spaced, like say they're all spaced right, my light's okay, environment's good, if I have them in the beds, I know that each seed grew up with the exact same option of food and everything else and environment that each other pheno has. So whoever wins, who's the best plant or whatever, right? As long as I know that I've taken care of everything, it'll really make the ones stand out. So I really like the beds for that, because some of them can be just monsters, and they don't truly get to be that way if you're not, like, say you're just giving an average feed program to all your 50 different pots in a hydro setup. You know what I mean? Like, each cut can take things differently. So if you have a pheno in that bed, a living soil, you know that if that genetic or that pheno specifically is just wants to eat a lot, it's gonna eat, and you know, it'll eat everything available to it, and it'll possibly get bigger than the other plants. Just, and then you'll know like that one specifically likes the heavy feed, or you know what I mean? It's like when you get into tune with the bed, you can, you know, you only give the plants so little room or so many little options, so it's up to them, and then you just pick out the best one in the end. I like it because they're usually just gigantic, and you just go through them all.
I love cultivating in beds. I feel it makes me feel like a genius, and
Yeah,
like I have a little moment with myself, and I'm like, you're doing nothing. Like you've done nothing. Like
I love beds so much. I used to do the blue mats and full on living soil, but then now I do I got like a good worm system, so I like re-amend some stuff here and there, but it's mostly still KNF like ferments and stuff to keep up.
How are you?
But mostly all the worms and millipedes I have in my beds, they're active and they do their thing. So I feed them once in a while, and then all the other ferments for the plants.
Are you hand watering?
Yeah. Right now I'm hand watering the beds. Make up a res. I always water carbon. Always. Every time I make a res, there's carbon. And my staples are basically carbon and soybean amino acids. And I'll use that my entire veg. And it's very good. It's just got amazing properties that help benefit the soil and growth of the plant. And it's all organic and fermented processes, blah, blah, blah. But like I said, another great thing about it, it's very scalable. So, it's good It's a good 2-part veg program that can do good on scale and stuff.
Is that Health Canada approved as of today or no? I don't know.
Oh yeah, the soybean aminos and the humates. Yeah,
perfect. That's awesome. Well, I mean, it's so good to start seeing that shift where we can, grow in that more, green life production, Steve Cantwell style, like the indoor living beds, bottomless pots, cycle on cycle. That's really what I want to see up here in Canada and what I'm stoked for.
And your place, right? It looks pretty amazing, actually. It's super ideal.
Yeah, no, I mean,
great to see that. I love seeing it because I just love.
If you're ever in Calgary, you need to stop by and see, because the indoor greenhouse facility that we're working out of here is absolutely incredible. It was built back in the days when money was falling from the skies, and it was easy to find it. So well, Connor, I really appreciate you taking the time. I was really enjoyed chatting with you. What, as we wrap up, what do you have planned for this year? What's on your radar as your next projects you're tackling, either personally or professionally?
A break. I need a break. My family needs a break, right? Since my operations and recovery, I've had to been go to get my greenhouses up and going this year for the program. And the summer program starts in February when you got the moms and the clones to prepare. So, I had a lot of recovery and growth this year from my operations and stuff. So I'm looking forward to having this round 2 finish being processed and basically taking a break and having some family time to recharge the batteries and prepare for next year. So I just have a whole bunch of new strains that I want to basically hit with some pollen and hunt some seeds for next year's sun grown. I continually want to work on my indoor being dedicated for flower only, for lab purposes, testing different strains, because I want to save all my hash production for just greenhouses, because the quality is just, I see the quality in indoor versus outdoor, and it's it's hard to go back.
So because the outdoor quality is just so much more.
Yeah, I just love the flavors so much more.
Wow, that's incredible.
Just hits me better. I don't know, cleaner.
I'm incredibly excited, man. I think you've got a super bright future in the space, and it's incredible to see how short a time from when you got into this to what you're managing now, and the handle that you've got on it. It's really impressive. So
I did a lot of relentless studying, looking up to people. I saw people, like I said, Blow Toke Smoke, but El Hasho, Mike is pretty awesome. Hey, watch it. So, looking up to those people, really helped things streamline with like the dedication and like all the research I was doing, and just, you know, throwing myself into the fire and figuring it out.
100%, man. Well, I mean, before we sign off, I want to give you a chance to give any last shout outs or anybody that you know, might have helped you on your way that you haven't gotten a chance to mention in this interview.
Oh yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Lost Boys Resin. Jesse, he helped me big time. I just basically I was about to get my second operation, and I was like, hey, like, do you want to come wash for me? I'll teach you my SOPs or whatever. And he was just fully committed and passionate about it, and it worked out great. And you know, really helped inspire him to, you know, go forth with his own brand or whatever. And he helps me out all the time, and you know, he's a great guy. And then I have my other two best friends from Windsor I convinced to move out here to help me. And they didn't know too much about growing, but I gave them a nice, great program and some lessons, and put them through all the bullshit of making so many ferments and straining them and all the hard, nasty shit they had to endure to learn. And so big thanks to them. And obviously my wife is pretty supporting, and she gives me creative freedom when it came to, you know, a decision to leave a salary job to just go, you know, start randomly growing weed and try to make it in that sort of sense. So other than that, those people have definitely been a major part of my recovery and growth in the last couple of years. So I definitely thank them a lot.
Awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. Definitely going to have you on again. I can tell that there's definitely a lot.
Yeah, you know, we got to talk about more.
We're busy. Got to talk about lots more. And I think that, you know, once you get some rest and you've got your health, man, I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm pooping good now. And like, honestly, that's so big.
Pineapple's pooping good now.
I know. They don't even know. I'm pooping good now. Things are different. Ready. People are like, wow, this is some of the best rosin I've tried recently. What's going on? And it's like, bro, we're on the train, guys. Look, we're going. I'm pooping good.
The melt was incredible. I'm stoked to
yeah, the round two stuff. There's some amazing things. We got some hype cuts, like the Cap Junkie. That one's like a Capulator Sea Junkie clone collaboration they did. I got that one for flower. It's supposed to do 40% something cannabinoids. That's what Capulator got his to test that. So I'm going to test that this winter in the next coming weeks. And we also have some of the rosin and melt from that too. So that's like a fun one. But man, we got so many other strains. I'm so excited.
Dude, that's awesome. That's
so awesome. Much more melt to come. And I can't wait to get you some.
Bring it. Bring the melt. Bring it.
Will.
That's awesome. Well, Connor, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you have an awesome night. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you tune in for the next one. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, brother.